Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint to self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, life coach to women, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. Most of our suffering and upset comes from how tightly we hold on to our perspectives as truths and the emotional and mental behaviors, even physical, we cling to that never serves us, such as perfectionism, procrastination, negative self-talk, and avoidance. When we live from a space that prevents us from living our life to the fullest, we are closed to everything and open to nothing. And that keeps us in a cycle that pushes against our growth and ourselves. There's a term for this behavior, and it's called self-sabotaging. Today, you and I are taking a one-on-one deep dive into self-sabotaging, what it is, how it impacts us, and then we're going to move into a space where we can learn to be observers of ourselves and our behaviors so that we can grow, find self-love, rest in inner peace, and thrive as the souls we are having a human experience. So let's dive right in. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. Oh boy, where do we start? Have you ever really started thinking about your life and then felt like you just had the biggest slap across your face when you realize that half of the things you've given your time and energy to simply don't matter? Or maybe even worse, to be honest, you suddenly realize in this thinking about your life process that half of the things that have happened are because at times you've been your own worst enemy. Ugh, I've done it. I have been there. I'm sure I will find myself tripping back into this hard point of life at some point or another. But I remember a time in my life where I was living in such an unfulfilling, unsustainable way. There was this perceived air of perfection that covered everything that I did. Again, perceived air. I pushed hard, went bigger, tried to show up in a way that perfection covered everything that I did. And yet I was only one moment away from this house of cards falling down around me. I was exhausted. I wasn't enjoying the experiences I was trying to create. I was sabotaging myself and everything I thought and wanted. It was such a nasty way to live, and yet haven't we all done this on some level? You know, no one is free of creating issues for themselves, no matter how mindful, how educated, how focused you are. There are times when we get in our own way. The point of this entire conversation today is to drive your attention to what you may actually be doing that causes you to feel like you fail. And once we identify that, I hope that I can show you how simple it is to become an observer in your life, to really show up and know how to mindfully live in a way that creates your truest desires. That's the hope, right? So that's the goal. Take that journey with me. And let's dive right in, right? Because I don't want to waste a single second of your precious time. And we have to start, as we often do, with our definition. What is self-sabotaging? At its core, self-sabotaging involves any attitude, any behavior that does not match up with your core values or beliefs and interferes, really lean into that word, interferes, with your ability to achieve your goals. Again, we've all done this from time to time, but self-sabotaging is a deeper pattern of thought, of action that creates an outgoing or ongoing problem that honestly prevents you from moving forward and facing change successfully. Now, when we are fully active in this behavior, there are several ways that it shows up. I mentioned a few a moment ago, but they are certainly worth repeating. So we tend to procrastinate to the point of issue. We lean into perfectionism and drive ourselves to the point of exhaustion and a host of other negative emotions. We engage in nasty, negative self-talk. We tend to try to avoid situations and things that make us uncomfortable, even people. And we often will either create conflict or avoid it like the plague. Now, what's important to understand is most of this is driven by anxiety. Most of this is driven by unhealed trauma, self-doubt, limiting beliefs, fear. Fear is a huge one. And all of this undermines our well-being. It becomes especially problematic when the behavior becomes the pattern, the habit. And we lean into those because we've set this up for ourselves as safety and the most productive way that we see fit to handle any situation. And then it becomes an automatic behavior. This is something that can lead to such nasty negative consequences. And so we have to get a hold of it immediately. We have to know what's going on and that there is always a way around it, a way to show up that doesn't cause us to tank. When we begin to see that we are the ones, we, not everyone else, but us, are stunting our own growth and throttling our happiness, we have to start peeling back the behaviors. So what are the behaviors? There are a few hallmark signs, pattern behaviors of self-sabotaging. Now, if you do one or two of these things, does that mean that you're actively sabotaging yourself? No. But I do want you to look at the whole picture and begin to question what need to be addressed and why you may be doing the things that you are doing. That's so important. And if you identify that you are doing more than, say, 2 or 3 of these things, I would definitely lean in and begin to question yourself, your behavior, and why you're holding yourself in that space of stuck. So here are some of those signs. You avoid people and situations instead of addressing them. Now, let me say this. This is totally different than not responding to someone who does not deserve a response or someone who has not earned a response. This is where you refuse to lean in, have conversations, work through problems, and address what is needed. If you avoid finding solutions in hopes that things will go away, this is a problem. This can be very self-sabotaging. Problems rarely disappear on their own. They may, pause for a hot moment, but long term, they will find their way back into the rhythm of your life. If you're avoiding and you know that you don't take on the things that you're supposed to, ask yourself, am I avoiding discomfort instead of valuing the moment? Am I avoiding discomfort instead of valuing a relationship? Am I avoiding discomfort instead of valuing myself? Big questions. But these questions can really help us know what is worthy of my time and my response and what isn't. What am I doing that needs to be addressed and what can be left alone, right? Next. This is another one we need to talk about, and it's staying in your comfort zone and refusing to change, right? Because this is a huge red flag of self-sabotage. Why? Because it means you are closed to growth. You are set in your ways. You have no reason to engage in something more because you have no reason to, right? Why do we need to engage with growth or learning if you have no desire to grow? Each and every one of us knows that life changes. Things change. So why do we need to be stuck while the world around you moves on? Can't you become more? Can't you learn? You are totally self-sabotaging your life if you refuse to see, do, be, learn, or become anything else because you are refusing to look at and be a part of life's growth process. It's natural, right? Why do you have to push against it? Now, this next one is a perfect action of perfectionism. I know because I've used it, right? But there is a catch-22, and I want to tell you about that in just a moment. But It's setting goals that are too low so that you ensure that you can be successful or feel successful. And the opposite of that is setting them too high that they are absolutely impossible to reach. I feel like that probably makes sense to you, and I don't need to, beat the dead horse and go any further with that. But I do want to talk about the catch-22. When I am working with someone to increase their confidence or to get into motivation or set up a healthier lifestyle or habit base, I will often have them set small micro goals. So these very easily obtainable goals, because I want them to have that hit of dopamine, right? I want them to have all of those good feelings pulsing through their bodies that reminds them that showing up feels good. When we are flooded with our happy feelings, those good feeling hormones, we naturally gain confidence that we can do it then and another time beyond, should the occasion arise. So in this case, setting small, easy to jump over goals is really good. It's important. But if we're using this to gain validation and base our worth, that is where we begin to self-sabotage. So know the difference, please. Next, this is one that I truly cannot personally stand. I'm serious. I have people like this in my personal life, and it drives me nuts. I know with exact certainty that you know these people too. But it's those people that create conflict purposefully. We know that person, don't we? And maybe this is you, and I love you, but you need to stop that, right? Maybe you just need to identify that this is in your behavior. Not only is this a mental and emotional issue, right? This is not healthy. It takes so much time and energy away from yourself. You could be making huge gains in new growth, in new goals, and new intentions if you stepped away from purposely causing drama. And if you are someone who likes to cause drama, call me, right? We need to work some things out. But in all seriousness, it's important to ask yourself why. Why do I want to constantly stay in dysregulation to find my value and worth? So many people will show up, cause a problem, and then feel good about causing the problem, even if the good is surrounded in negative feelings. They found validation. They found themselves needed. Most of the time, this is a trauma response. So if you know that these people exist in your life, know that they're often acting out of a deep trauma, a wound that has not been cleaned up. What we need to do is clean it up so that we can have a healthier self that doesn't need chaos to fulfill us. So look at this behavior. Is this me? Am I doing this? If so, what steps do I need to take to get out of it? Next is constantly seeking outside validation, because this is actually a true form of self-sabotage. If the only value you have is what the other people in your life offer to you, you do not allow yourself to own your needs, your thoughts, your desires, or your emotions. You wait for other people to define you. But what happens if those that define you really don't give you positive validation? What then? What happens if they never provide what you're seeking? Will you only see yourself as a failure? Most likely. Can't you see that sabotages everything that's important? I hope so. Let's keep moving, because making excuses is also a form of self-sabotaging because we refuse to take responsibility. Responsibility is necessary for life ownership, for peace, and certainly self-love. And self-sabotage is in full swing if you're constantly trying to turn to things that don't work for you in order to make yourself feel better. And we all know this. So that's like drugs or food addictions, eating disorders, alcohol, sex, anything that harms you in the long run. That's really working to dull the feelings, thoughts, and emotions. Comparing yourself is another form. You tank your worth if you find your value in someone else. Withdrawing from life or putting yourself in long-term isolation doesn't make your problems or situations go away, but we often tell ourselves that it does. This form of self-sabotage really impacts our ability to deal with things in real time, own ourselves, and it certainly breaks our need for connectivity. These are just a few of the top hallmark behaviors. Are there more? Of course there are. But, this is what I often see most come into my office. And when I point them out, I'm not going to lie, most women find themselves angry or they burst into tears. It feels damn dirty to have gotten in your own way. It sucks to hear that you are the master of your own disaster. But I tell you what, and I want you to hear me, if this is you and you are in this space and it's very active in your life, you can fix it. That's what's so important. You can actually stop showing up this way. Because remember, you cannot change what you cannot witness. Knowing is step one. Step two is acceptance. And acceptance is always found in the why. Remember that. There are many reasons why people self-sabotage, and let's lean into those. Why do we self-sabotage? And the biggest one that I often see is that unhealed trauma we talked about just a moment ago. It's one of the worst because we are tricked into believing that we are not worthy, that our lives are not worthy, that the things that have happened to us is what we deserve. I hear that so often. And when we shift this belief and realize that things that happen to us are often for us, we can begin to release the grip of this behavior. So the top one for me, undoubtedly, is unhealed trauma. The second one is limiting beliefs, right? And this is a place that many people struggle with. And if you're not sure what they are, or if you even have them, go listen to episode 71. I'm going to link that in the show notes for you. There, you're going to find a firm understanding of what self-sabotaging is when it comes to our limiting beliefs. If we have all these limits in place, there's no way for us to get onto a healing path or a path that really serves our lives long term. And as I said before, self-sabotage is usually driven by fear. It's also driven by anxiety and negativity, which often leads people into that worst case scenario thinking. I call this a brain virus. Why? Because it distorts our moments. It leads us into so many what ifs and that feeling like the world is, against us or always has it out for us. And worst case scenario makes us think that there's only one option, good or bad, right? So maybe that's two options, but it just feels like there's only one way most things will go. And we create this cycle of emotional pain of feeling rejected or always feeling like we're going to fail. Another reason we do this is because of that harsh inner critic within us. It causes us to engage in unproductive actions and distorts our feelings. Everything we experience thereafter comes through this lens of inherent negativity. Your brain vigilantly looks for potential problems. If you've listened to this podcast regularly, you know that this is true. If the brain's always looking for trouble brewing outside of the normal safety checks, you know what happens? It keeps us in this space of harshness. Unsteady and unstable relationships, no matter what kind, whether it's family or friendship or romantic, can also keep us in self-sabotage if we feel like we can't ever be enough or we can't measure up. If we feel abandonment issues, then what happens? We feel like our needs and our feelings are never met, and we're so scared that if we do something wrong, we're going to be left. All of these things contribute to self-sabotage, but it goes even deeper than that. The more you engage in the things that don't work for you, the more you disrupt the process of your goals, even the progress of your goals, of your dreams, of your needs, and you can prevent yourself from living a life that you truly feel has value. Some people get in the way of their own happiness in one area, while others completely disrupt everything. So you have to ask yourself, is this me? Am I disrupting one or more areas of my life with these behaviors? And speaking of the behaviors and where they show up in the different areas, let's lean into that and examine it really quickly. Because self-sabotage in your romantic relationships is a big, big thing. Sometimes we undermine our long-term relationships, and ultimately it leads to the demise of that relationship. Often born out of fear of loss, we can pick, right? We pick fights. We blame. We give the silent treatment. We try to control or monitor our relationship and the behaviors of the other person. We constantly seek reassurance. And you know what? That is so exhausting to your partner. We have impossibly high standards, or we leave the relationship before they can even develop. Now, in the area of work or your career, you can prevent yourself from achieving your goals because fear of failure or anxiety traps you in this comfort zone. It's here that you refuse to ask for opportunities, or you refuse to seize them when they come your way. We can feel dissatisfied with the negative impacts of our mental and emotional well-being if we are not progressing, right? We want a life of progression. That's a natural instinct for us. But if we're not present, if we're not active, what are we? We're sitting still. And then we say, you know what? I feel stuck. In your goals, you can be intentional or you can lean into procrastination. Anytime we don't show up, we're not actively doing what's best for us. Either way, you're making a choice. Intentional action is a choice that serves you. Stalling, delaying, and leaning into I can'ts is a choice that can absolutely take you down. We even see this in friendships and family, where we have this sense of competition in place so that we can prove our worth and our superiority. This right here is death of many relationships. Negative behaviors will never, and I do mean never, build solid relationships. And when we self-sabotage in this area of our lives, we usually do it through passive-aggressive behaviors, through seeking approval or constantly explaining or proving ourselves right, perfectionism, trying to be better. It grows to the point that something breaks. So let's swiftly move through the types of sabotage that I mentioned earlier, because we're going to lean into just 5 of them. There's a lot more, but these, again, are the top 5 that I see. And just know, if you're seeing this within yourself right now, no matter what form it takes for you, like anything, I've said this before in our time together, it can be moved. It can be shifted. Anything that's keeping you from living your healthiest and happiest expression of yourself can change, okay? So number 1 of the types is procrastination. Now, I want to say this. Sometimes we delay because we don't have all the information we need, and that's okay. That's actually not procrastination. That's holding space and pause. There are other times where we can't take anymore, so we delay, and that is also okay because we want to give ourselves the ability to show up as our best selves with our best, mental and emotional self present. What I'm talking about here is stalling because you'd rather not, as my husband says, handle your business. We trick ourselves into delaying so that we don't have to deal. It's the most likely because people want to avoid stress or anxiety or any form of emotional discomfort. And they think it's easier than doing the hard shit, right? For a lack of a better word. But procrastination can result in depression. It can make us feel hopeless and helpless and a lack of energy, and that makes it difficult to start or even finish. So the question really comes down to, why am I delaying? Do I need more information? Do I just need a pause? Or am I avoiding something more? It's so important to know. And if you really don't know what procrastination is all about, or if you are engaging in it, go to episode 37. It can help you get into a space where you can identify what you need, right? I'm throwing that out there. I've already thrown out another episode for you. But the reason why is everything I talk about really often leads back to something else. We're humans, and our feelings and our behaviors are complicated, right? So we have to know everything from every angle to build and to heal. So let's move forward and let's talk about perfectionism a little bit deeper. Again, we've talked about it a lot. Again, I call myself a reformed perfectionist. I still sometimes fight this. I know many of us do. But perfectionism is where everything needs to be perfectly perfect, or at least appear so that it doesn't have a break in our systems, right? It can be so damn self-defeating. It can be devastating if things don't show up the way we want them to, if we've really put a lot of hope around a single event. This can truly prevent us from moving forward and keep us in that shame cycle, that blame cycle, and in the space of self-sabotage. Self-criticism is another form that I often see, and it's where negative self-talk and that harsh criticism that we really give to ourselves impacts our thoughts, feelings, and our actions. The hard part of this is it's so often automatic, right? We have become so conditioned in this thought process that we really struggle to move forward. We talked about this before. And we really lean into that harsh inner mean girl because it's easier than thriving. There are two others that I want to talk about, and that is resisting change and poor self-care. Uncertainty tolerance is a big, huge issue for most people. It's where their window, so how much they can handle, is so narrow that they have a hard time tolerating anything that doesn't feel normal or comforting or, even sometimes good. But most of the time, that window is so narrow that they only have a tolerance for the negatives. It's very interesting. But it's this resistance to change that has us clinging to old habits, making excuses. I often hear, well, I'm too busy. I don't have enough time. I'm too tired. You probably have said those yourself. Let's get real. And it's here that we struggle to take a risk. We don't learn more. We don't set goals, and we most certainly keep growth at bay. And the last one, I just mentioned it, self-care. Poor self-care is a form of self-sabotage. I'm not talking about getting your nails done, okay? I'm talking about everything from poor eating habits, lack of sleep, not properly giving your body what it needs, not drinking your damn water, avoiding going to the doctor, the therapist. It can lead us to self-medicating. It can lead us to depression and a host of other health problems or emotional and mental consequences. So, how do we stop? How do we become the observers that we talked about in the very beginning? Because to observe means to witness, and that's exactly what we can do to move these behaviors out of the way once we have some very simple new behaviors and tools. So again, the first is to acknowledge self-sabotage is not a part of your character. So I want you to give yourself permission to use these tools. We can't change anything if we don't permit ourselves to do so. So let's break down the how. First things first, we have to boost our self-awareness. Remember, I said we can't change anything we're not aware of. I've said that ad nauseum. And the reason why is I need you to hear it, right? I need you to witness it. I need you to understand that you may have these behaviors as the roadblocks to your goals. And until you become aware of them, they will simply remain. They will be a part of your everyday. Begin to spend time in reflection. This is a big one. This is how we boost our self-awareness. Practice mindfulness. Allow yourself to see yourself. When was the last time you did a life review? When was the last time you reviewed how you are showing up? When was the last time you looked at what's serving you and what's not and made changes? Look at where you are and bravely shake up what needs to be shaken. If you are a visual person, get your feelings out on paper, journal. Pause during the day and check in. As you develop insight, as you become aware, you become more intentional. This happens very naturally. You don't even have to do anything. But once you become very intentional, guess what you're not? Self-sabotaging. Next, you have to create a gap in your thinking. This all starts in your thoughts. It's in your behavior, but the thought is the director of the behavior. If we have a gap in our thinking, we can pause from a negative thought that says, I suck and I don't know why I even try. If we pause, we can look at it. I suck and I don't know why I try. Is this true? Can we break it down? We can ask some questions. The first one is, do I really suck? Is there fact behind that? No, I don't suck. I can't do this one task, but maybe that's because I need to learn more. That frames the understanding of the thought, right? Next, you can ask yourself, is this helping or is this hindering me? Of course, negative thoughts don't always help. Generally, most people struggle with them. Some use it for motivation, but that's not what we're talking about right now. Then the next question is, what do I have control over right now? All of these very simple questions act as a pause. And when they act as a pause, that gains you control. It allows you to understand that you can mindfully find a choice in the moment that serves you. If you are mindful in finding a choice, what are you not doing? Self-sabotaging. Next, I want you to lean into something we talked about before, but it's truly to gain mindful goals. And as you create these goals, I want you to create action plans with them. The last part is incredibly important. We often create goals, but we don't give ourselves a workable path to get there. You've heard me say that before. Think about the goal. I want to lose 20 pounds and drop 2 pant sizes. Great. That's a wonderful goal if that's what you need or what you want. But how will you get there? Just saying that is not enough. And just saying it often leads to the self-sabotaging part. So we go beyond, I want to lose 20 pounds. The roadmap, the actionable plan is, I will be mindful about what I eat. I will only eat when I'm hungry or in set times that I establish for myself. I will exercise daily for at least 20 minutes or more. I will drink 1 gallon of water each day. I will track my food if that serves me. I'll be mindful about my thoughts that drive me to eat. This is a plan, okay? This is how we stop the sabotage. Next, we have to make small, workable changes. Like the plan that I just gave you 2 seconds ago, that's small, workable changes. Many of us want to burn everything down when we're trying to make our lives better. But I'm telling you right now, do not do it. It doesn't work. We want to be kind to ourselves. We want to be attentive to our lives. We want small steps that can help us change our behaviors and move us towards goals, not away from them. What are our options? That is the best way to start formulating options. From here, we want to take some deep, conscious steps to befriend ourselves. I can't tell you how many times I've seen highly, and I mean highly successful women who are knocking everything down that they want and desire, but their inner voice really causes them to hate themselves. It causes them to lean into a lack of self-love, and they keep themselves from being ultra successful. So you have to have a friendship with yourself. You really can start by looking at what you value in the friendships outside of yourself. And when you can begin to apply those inward. Get to know your strengths and lean into those. Be willing to engage with yourself on a new level that perhaps you've never done before. And when you do that, you begin to value the space that you take up. Next, this is probably the second most important piece, and this is to get to know your emotions. At the baseline of all of this, I've told you, is fear. It's not fully aligning with your thoughts, feelings, and actions. What does fear mean to you? Do you even know? Do you have a definition? We have about 22 different emotions on our emotional scale. Have you ever thought to lean into those and to dive into some deeper understanding for yourself? You probably haven't. but I want to give you the 22 emotions now, and some of them are lumped together, and so it seems like there's a lot more in that one space. But I want to give them to you, and I'd love for you to spend some time writing out your personal definitions, not Webster's definitions, but your definitions. It's really important. So here they are. 1, the very first one, and this is in the good feeling bracket, is joy. Lumped with joy is appreciation, empowerment, freedom, and love. Number 2 is passion. 3 is enthusiasm, and it also has eagerness and happiness alongside it. Number 4 is positive expectation and belief. Number 5 is optimism. 6, hopefulness. 7, contentment. And that ends our good feeling bracket. And we're going to move into the bad feelings or the negative feelings. Number 8 is boredom. Number 9 is pessimism. 10 is frustration, and there's also irritation and impatience alongside it. 11 is overwhelm. 12, disappointment. 13, doubt. 14, worry. 15, blame. 16, discouragement. 17, anger. 18, revenge. 19 is hatred and rage. 20 is jealousy. 21 is insecurity with guilt and unworthiness with it. And 22 is fear. We already know that most of what happens with self-sabotage comes down to fear. And in this scale, it is the worst of our bad or negative emotions. When you know what all of these things mean to you, I want you to pick out the 5 which you lean into the most. What 5 emotions do you experience the most? And are they supporting you, or are they adding to your self-sabotaging behaviors? Really important. Lastly, in how we deal with and really become an observer in our lives to stop self-sabotaging, you must do the healing work. You must. You can't run forever. You have to be willing to address what has happened in your life, what's not working, and what you need. If you want to take control, if you want to stop self-sabotaging, this is something that must take place. There are so many paths that can take you there. Go back to episode 1 of this podcast and move through the blueprint of healing that I've outlined for you. Connect with me or another therapist to help you move forward. Pick up a book that best suits you so you can start the first steps. Some of my favorites are The Body Keeps Score, or Your Erroneous Zones by Dr. Wayne Dyer, or What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah. What can you do to take control? What can you change? What can you shift? Please remember that self-sabotaging is not a character flaw. It's a set of behaviors, usually coming from fear-based feelings that are keeping you tight in a box. It's keeping you away from the life that you envision. It's so far out of reach when you keep yourself in a holding pattern that does not work. What do you want? What do you need? How will you get there? When you allow yourself to question and to move forward, you're essentially being able to get your life together. It's so needed. It's so necessary. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips for bettering your life and are seeking daily inspiration, please follow me on social media at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. Or you can visit the show notes, the blog, or my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. Also, follow me on Insight Timer, where a new class is forthcoming. Please also review and share this episode with those that you know and love. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.